Ever get that feeling? Like you're kind of stuck doing the same stuff over and over, even when you know it's not really good for you.
Oh, yeah.
Well, today we're going to do a deep dive into that, okay? We're going into Stephen Bartlett's The Diary of a CEO, Law 8, Never Fight a Bad Habit.
Interesting.
Yeah, and this one, honestly, really kind of blew my mind.
Really? What was it about this one?
Well, he basically says that instead of trying to, like, force ourselves to stop a bad habit,
Yeah.
we should actually focus on replacing it
Replacing it.
with a new routine, a new reward.
Oh.
And it's really interesting. Like, the
Yeah.
way he explains it, he uses this example of his dad's smoking habit.
I see.
And it just, like, paints such a clear picture
Uh-huh.
of how these habits actually work.
So it's not just like willpower.
No, exactly. It was like this whole cycle for him.
Interesting.
So the book lays out this idea of habit loops.
Habit loops.
And it's basically like a three-part system. First, there's the cue, the thing that sets the habit in motion.
Right.
Then you have the routine, the actual behavior itself.
Okay.
And finally, the reward, the positive feeling or the thing you get out of it that reinforces the habit.
I see. So like a 3-step process.
Exactly.
All right.
So like in Bartlett's dad's case, being in the car was the cue.
Okay.
The routine was smoking a cigarette.
Uh-huh.
And then the reward was that nicotine hit and just feeling good.
Makes sense.
But then the book goes on to talk about the actual neuroscience behind this.
Oh, wow.
Like when we experience that reward, our brains release dopamine.
Right.
And that dopamine basically is like, hey, that felt good. Let's do that again.
So it's chemical.
It's like a feedback loop.
Makes sense.
So it's not just like you're bad or you lack willpower.
Yeah.
There's actually like brain chemistry at play.
That's really interesting. So how do you fight that if it's actually chemical?
Well, that's where Bartlett's approach is so interesting. He's not saying ignore the reward system.
No.
He says we should work with it. So instead of just trying to like suppress the bad habit,
Right.
he says find a healthier reward to replace the unhealthy one.
Okay. I'm interested to hear how this works.
So, like, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
The book uses this example of Bartlett's dad replacing cigarettes with lollipops.
Lollipops.
I know, right?
That's so funny.
I thought it was a joke when I first read it,
Yeah.
but then it kind of clicked.
How so?
It's not about the lollipop itself.
Right.
It's about replacing that reward.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So you're still giving the brain what it wants, but it's associated with a different behavior.
So it's like you're kind of hacking the habit loop.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Which I think is so cool.
So is that like proven to work?
Well, the book actually cites research
Oh, okay.
that suggests that trying to suppress a habit can actually make it stronger.
Oh, wow.
And it kind of makes sense if you think about it. Like,
Yeah.
have you ever heard that analogy about the driving instructor?
Yeah.
They say, look where you want to go, not at what you're trying to avoid.
Oh, yeah.
It's like that. When you're telling yourself not to do something, you're still focusing on it,
Right.
which can make you more likely to actually do it.
Almost like reverse psychology.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have to work with our brains.
Work with them,
Yeah.
not against them.
And using a different reward is one way to do that.
Okay, so that's one way.
But there was another thing that the book talked about
With that.
that was super important,
Okay.
and that's sleep.
Sleep.
Yeah, Bartlett makes a really strong case for the connection between sleep and habit change.
Okay.
He's basically arguing that when we're sleep deprived,
Yeah.
our stress levels go up,
Okay.
and that makes us more vulnerable to just cravings and bad habits in general.
Yeah, it's like you're running on fumes.
Exactly.
And your willpower is just gone.
And we all know sleep is important,
Right.
but the book goes so in depth about why
Oh, wow.
it affects like everything.
Like the foundation.
It's the foundation.
If you don't have
You
that,
can't build anything on it.
it all falls apart.
So we've got these habit loops that we can hack. We need to prioritize sleep.
Right.
But there was one more piece of the puzzle:
What is that?
willpower.
Willpower.
And this idea that it's a limited resource.
I see.
So have you ever heard of that cookie versus radish experiment?
The cookie and radish, yeah.
They make people eat cookies or resist them and eat radishes,
Okay.
and then they give them a puzzle to solve.
Interesting.
And the people who had to resist the cookies gave up on the puzzle way faster.
Oh, wow. So they used up all their willpower.
It's like willpower is a muscle that gets tired,
Yeah.
which explains why when we try to change everything at once, it usually doesn't work.
Too much, yeah.
The book actually advises against taking on too many habit changes at once.
Makes sense.
It's better to focus on one or two.
Keep it simple.
Exactly.
So we need to prioritize sleep, be mindful of our willpower, and try to replace those bad rewards with good ones.
It sounds like a good plan.
It's about making it easier for ourselves to succeed,
Not harder.
rather than trying to, like, force it.
I like that.
I feel like we're finally getting a glimpse behind the curtain and understanding how these habits actually work.
So how do we actually apply all this?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting.
I can't wait to hear.
So stay tuned. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, habit loops, sleep, even that willpower is kind of like a muscle, right?
Yeah.
But how do we actually use all of this?
Yeah, like how do we apply it to our own lives?
Exactly. What does that look like day to day?
Well, the book really stresses starting small,
Yeah.
achievable steps
Yeah.
instead of trying to change everything at once.
Yeah, like a complete overhaul.
Exactly, because that just leads to burnout.
Right, you get overwhelmed and then you just quit.
And the book also says it's not about deprivation.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's about finding those positive things, those rewards that make you feel good.
So it's like shifting your perspective from what you're giving up to what you're gaining.
I like that. It's a mindset shift.
Yeah, and I think that's a really powerful takeaway.
Like working with your brain instead of against it.
Exactly, instead of constantly battling.
Right, because we know how those battles usually end.
We've all been there.
So the book gives some pretty practical tips for how to do that.
Okay, like what?
Well, Bartlett talks about setting clear intentions
Intention.
and actually having a plan.
Like a strategy.
Yes, for when those cravings hit.
Because they will hit, right?
Oh, absolutely. So you got to be prepared.
So what else does he say?
Things like get rid of temptations in your environment.
Make it easier on yourself.
Yeah, or have a distraction ready to go.
Like when the craving hits, you know what to do.
You've got your plan.
And of course, we can't forget sleep.
A foundation.
Right. Bartlett says getting enough rest is crucial for willpower.
All comes back to sleep.
It really does. It's like, putting money in a bank.
Putting money in the willpower bank.
You got to have those resources to make good decisions.
Yeah, you can't make those healthy choices if you're running on empty.
And it's not just about how much sleep.
It's the quality too, right?
Yeah, the book even goes into how to improve your sleep hygiene.
Oh, interesting. Like what kind of stuff?
Like setting a regular sleep schedule
Okay, consistency.
and having a relaxing bedtime routine.
So it's about setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, not relying on willpower alone.
Creating an environment that makes it easier.
I love that. It's so empowering.
It's not about being good or bad.
It's about understanding how our brains work
The science behind it.
and using that to make positive changes.
And ultimately creating the future we want.
Speaking of the future, there's this line in the book that just stayed with me.
Oh, tell me.
He says, your habits are your future.
Your habits are your future.
It's so simple, but so powerful.
It really makes you think.
About those small choices.
Those daily actions.
Yeah, and how they add up over time.
They really do shape who we become.
It's like, we're not just reacting to life. We're creating it.
Through our habits.
It's a call to action.
Be mindful.
To choose those habits that align with the future we want.
That's what it's all about.
And that brings us to the key takeaway for our listeners today.
It's like the big takeaway from this whole law is just stop fighting yourself.
Yeah.
Stop trying to just brute force your way through breaking these bad habits.
Right.
Instead, find things that you can replace them with. Positive things and rewards that actually, you enjoy.
That make you feel good.
Exactly. And remember, small changes.
Small steps.
Lead to those big results.
Yeah, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
And maybe the most important thing, don't forget sleep.
Sleep always comes back to sleep.
It really does.
It's so crucial.
Because, without it, you're not giving yourself the tools to actually make those good choices.
Yeah, it's like trying to run a marathon with, no training.
You're going to hit a wall.
You're not going to make it.
And be patient with yourself, too.
Oh, for sure.
Change takes time.
You're going to have setbacks.
Oh, yeah.
But you just got to keep learning and keep moving forward.
And, Bartlett leaves with this really thought-provoking question. He says, your habits are your future.
Ooh, I like that.
It's like, what are those small things you can do today?
Right now.
To get where you want to be.
To create that future that you actually want.
I think it's a really powerful idea. It's like we have so much power.
More than we realize.
To shape our own lives.
Yeah, even those tiny actions.
They add up.
When you repeat them over time.
You become the sum of your habits.
So take a second, think about it.
Which habits are helping you?
And which ones might be holding you back?
Because you have a choice.
You always have a choice.
You can stay stuck.
Or you can choose something different.
Something better.
A path that leads you to where you want to go.
And it all starts with that first step.
So what will yours be?